888-318-7884. So why is this of interest to you? I mean, of all the things, you're a philosopher. Philosophers can pretty much talk about anything or write about anything. Or what got you onto this idea of wanting to help men take up their role as the head of a household?
Hmm. Well, it's certainly something I've had to struggle with a lot myself.
Okay.
And more and more, I've just found it's so much at the center of things. It's so much at the center of God's plan for us. In these days where many struggle with, is there a real difference, a significant difference between men and women? Is there a reason for that difference? What would that reason be? It's so central to the loving plan that God has for us that we understand that He had this generous, great plan in making men be different from women that very much is about, especially, the role that they have in the household. Not all men are called to be man of the household, but it is the most common vocation. It's the one wherein we can most directly and obviously see what God's plan was in designing the masculine human being.
Now, a lot of, I suppose that one of the critiques of even using this language is that many people hear in it a kind of oppressive or domineering overtone or undertone.
They do. And honestly, I think it's important to recognize there's a reason for that, especially when men fail in fulfilling this role.
Mm.
It can make masculinity, it can make the man of the household seem an onerous thing. And that's something that's part of understanding we men have to step up. But the answer isn't to turn away from this incredibly challenging, noble thing to which we're called. We just have to try to do it better. And it's not about dominating. It's not about power. It's about love. And it's about service. And it's about how God has, again, generously and wisely designed things that we can all flourish together if we're each willing in humility to discover the plan God has for us.
888-318-7884, our number here. Professor John Cuddeback, our guest. We will be doing open forum second hour with Jimmy. I probably should have mentioned that right up at the top because I know you're used to open forum first hour here on Thursdays. But with second hour, we'll open up the phone lines for open forum. This hour, we talk about this new project that Dr. Cuddeback is engaged in and about the general idea of a man's role in the household. 888-318-7884. Another possible kind of maybe spontaneous thought people might have is if you talk this way about men having a particular role in the household, men and women being different, all that suggests that you are maybe an anti-feminist or that you think the feminists are all wrong.
Well,
Is that true?
it's not true, but of course these terms are very tricky. I mean, what is meant by feminism is hard,
Right.
and we're not going to be able to kind of sort that all out. But the way I'd put it is this: from my perspective, I think I can see some of the real concerns that women who call themselves feminists have, and I have those same concerns, and I truly believe that a right understanding, again, of God's plan for man's role in the household is the answer that we're all looking for. It's the answer the men are looking for, and it will, at least in part, address what a genuine feminism is concerned with, right? And I think sometimes the temptation is when finding how men act and the ways that men have failed, to just go the direction of, okay, in any talk of men having a different role, any talk of men having any kind of leading role, okay, now immediately that's all a problem and offensive. Well, I think that's an overreaction, and I
Okay.
think we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater,
Yeah.
and we need to get it straight. But we need to approach this carefully. We need to approach it all with humility. It's very easy to talk past one another.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to be super sensitive to that. I am deeply aware from trying to understand this and working on this for years that there are real concerns that I'm just going to say many called feminists have. And it is deep in my heart that properly be addressed.
Would it be fair to say that I, as a husband and two of my children are daughters, so a husband and a father of daughters, it seems to me that if you wanted to really do something positive for women, you would be very concerned about fatherhood and the role of fatherhood, because fathers, we can really hurt our daughters. We can offend them. We can offend against them. We can, by our neglect or just our inability to make the kind of present connection that our girls need. Before she ever gets a chance to do anything about a career or an application to college and all that, we're there. And so it would strike me that a true feminism would really be concerned about fatherhood.
I completely agree, and I would add to that, many women, of course, are going to choose to get married. And for those who choose the married vocation, we want them to have good men as husbands. They need good fathers, and then particularly good husbands. And key to being the man of the household, at the center of it is understanding what it means to be a good husband. And again, in an amazing, beautiful plan, something that we're all working to try to understand better. But again, in humility, let's look at what the plan is, because we have to be willing to recognize something's been given to us. And when we receive that gift and live it, that's when all of us are going to be in the best situation.
Well, what about the man who might respond that really what you're talking about when you use the word like household, the woman is the homemaker. The household is her responsibility. I mean, you almost think of the 1950s television version of the dad, where it's the mom who does all the home stuff, the dad who does all the out of the home stuff.
Right.
What do you say to that guy?
I say there's a better plan. There's a better way.
Plan.
There's a richer way, where part of the problem is men have separated themselves from the household, and that itself is in part a cause for feminism. Because women, to some extent, want to oversimplify, but part of the situation, I'm not the first to point this out, is to have a sense of, if what's going on here is so important, why are the men here turning and giving all their attention to something else? And I say, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And so one of my main suggestions, key part of the message here, is men need to see themselves as household makers. I'm going to go ahead and use the term household maker and homemaker. I mean, really, these are, we could distinguish them, but fundamentally, a man and a woman, what's at the center, naturally speaking, of their marriage? They are working together in making this astounding, rich thing called a household a reality. And part of the biggest problem is that men have removed themselves from that project. Men don't see that as key to who they are as men. They see the home stuff as more superfluous and more something for women. That's a problem. They need to step up and put their attention there.
Well, as much as you might say, well, I can't disagree with you, but don't you, or what do you make of the critique? And I have to say, I think I agree with this critique, that from the time they're boys now, males are taught that in a certain way they're superfluous to the home. They're even the thing that bothers the home or upsets the peace of the home, or is the dopey father on TV, or even worse, the Homer Simpson or Family Guy type father who's just a moron and really doesn't get it. Everybody else in the home gets it. So even a good dad on TV often is the guy who doesn't get it,
Yep.
And so they're really being told pretty straightforwardly, and they hear this message: you're not part of this.
That's right. And that's why we need to be saying something else, because that's a catastrophe.
Okay.
We need to be saying there is a key role. A role is absolutely essential to the household being what it is, and frankly, it's at the heart of your becoming the man that nature and God call you to be. And we've lost that. We need to learn to reimagine what a real household is, and that's central to this. And I'm going to say we need to invite the men to take the lead in doing that. They need to be projecting this view that household is something specific, it's something concrete, it's something precious, it's something I'm willing to commit my life to, and here's how we're going to go about doing it. And that's the man that we're called to be, that's the man who's going to succeed in his relationship with his wife and have a great relationship with his children. Not going to be easy, but we need to start to conceptualize that and picture what that looks like concretely and start doing it.
888-318-7884 is the number. Professor John Cuddeback, philosophy professor at Christendom College, is our guest today. We're talking about being the man of the household. If you have questions in that regard or comments, or you just want to get in on the conversation, 888-318-7884. We got to take a quick break. Right back with your calls for Dr. Cuddeback.
We're glad you're with us. Stick around for more Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Cy. The latest episode of our podcast, Catholic Answers Focus, is available right now. This week, we talk with Carlo about the problems with Sola Scriptura. Here's a sample.
So, too, the Scripture is needed for us to be completed as Christians. But that doesn't mean we don't need other things to be complete as a Christian. I mean, I can think of a couple of things. I articulate this in the chapter in my book. We need to obey the judgment of the church, according to Matthew 18:15-17. For if we do not, we are to be treated as a Gentile and a tax collector. We're an outcast.
Yeah.
So we need to be obedient to the judgments of the church. We also need to hold fast to the standard of sacred tradition that Paul articulates in 2 Thessalonians 3:6. He says, in the name of Jesus, I command you to withhold yourselves from the idle brother who's not living in accord with the tradition.
You can hear the rest and get past episodes at CatholicAnswersFocus.com or subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
You know what Catholic radio is? It's training for the troops. It's a interaural of the ear boot camp. The folks who listen, who grow in their faith, grow in charity, grow in all the virtues, they then go out and exert an influence far beyond just themselves. Catholic radio has an exponential effect for bringing people deeper into the faith.
Dr. Ray Guarendi thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. And a little change because we have an opportunity on this Thursday afternoon. Professor John Cuddeback from Christendom College is in the neighborhood and has agreed to hang out with us for an hour and talk about his new project at life-craft.org to help men take up their role as the man of the household. It seems in a certain sense, one would think in most of history it would be completely non-controversial to say, to a man, you need to be the man of the household, but it's not non-controversial anymore. No. We had to deal with that, but there's a way in which I suppose one way to say it, I'm sure it's hard to say it like a philosopher since I have a philosopher here, but because the more we behave in a way that fits with our nature, the happier we are. And men and women have the same human nature.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But part of the gift is that God made man and woman different so that each would have something special and unique to offer, so that they'd be drawn together, so that together they can do something better, bigger, more complete, more beautiful than they would have been on their own. Or were they the same? And so there's something so beautiful about recognizing what is it that being a man, as opposed to a human, that being a man kind of draws us to do. And one of the ways I like to do that, to express what being man of the household means, a number of ways of putting it, is the man needs to be willing to take first responsibility.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, it means that he is going to have to say, I need first to conceive, to conceptualize, to understand what this whole project is. I think a good way to think about this is man naturally tends to be an initiator, a beginner. And it's fitting, good, and natural, for instance, that men propose to women. I think it's good to go back to look at the foundation of a household, that unique community called a household. The foundation, the beginning of it, is really when a man proposes to a woman. And it's good for us to think, what is he proposing? He is coming to a woman and saying, in so many words, I've got an idea. I have a notion. I've got a plan. I want to build something with you. And I'm inviting you to be my partner in this. And so from the beginning, he initiates it, and that carries through. It is always completely a joint plan, but he nonetheless, even in it being a joint plan, he kind of takes a first role. And I like to capture that by saying first responsibility, because it's first his to, as it were, again, understand what this is and to say, here's what the end is, and let's think together about how we're going to do this. But he's always willing to say, I have to make sure that I'm setting this up so that my natural role and your natural role can be best fulfilled here. And if I don't do that, then we don't have the foundation to work from.
John Cuddeback, our guest, 888-318-7884, our number. We start with Ryan in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. Hello, Ryan. Your question, please.
So when you get married in the church and your wife is Catholic and I'm Catholic, and we agree and we move on forward, and then we have children and she decides to move in a different direction, very different direction, and I want to continue in our faith. And then the children start to follow mom's teachings or her suggestions about our faith. How do I calmly present my kids with staying in the faith and just simply wanting to be part of my family?
That's okay, Ryan.
Versus her family.
Wow, that is a tough question. I mean, there's so many ways that in God's loving plan, we suffer. And there's so many things in the families where I talked about how a man needs to have a plan. And of course, again, a joint plan, but there's so many things that can happen that's going to make that plan be difficult to fulfill. And so suffering is certainly going to be a part of this. And so your question deserves a better answer than I'll be able to give. But I guess I would just say one thing, we might not always be able to succeed in achieving what you dearly want to achieve here. But you can always, as Mother Teresa said, you can always be faithful. I think already the answer was in part in the good way that you asked it. You said, how can I calmly remain yourself? Remain loving, you're acting from love, you have something key to offer, and you keep offering it. One of the things that we have to recognize is there are just certain things that are beyond our control. We can keep teaching, we can keep sharing, but particularly as children start to get a little older, we don't have dictatorial power over them. We don't have complete control of them. And so we can be exercising the authority that we have the best that we can. We can be presenting the faith and our worldview the best that we can. We can be doing our best to set the example and lead. But there comes a point where we've done all that we can do, and of course we keep praying, and we pray for one another, and we support one another. So that was again a tough, a hard question. But I encourage you to remain faithful. Just your being who you are, and you're being an example, and continuing to love and continuing to try is going to make a huge difference.
Ryan?
Yes.
Does that help you?
You know, it does. It does. And the hard part is the children know that I have faith, and they know that Jesus loves us.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they are away from me, they hear something else. And when they come back, it takes them a long time to settle down and accept that again. You know, they're 10 and 12.
Yeah. That's a very, very painful situation. Can
I just throw just one more thing, Ryan? Again, God bless you. I would, not pretending to have the full view here, but I just, from my heart, it just seems to me, to the extent that you can continue to pattern for them how much you love your wife and their mother, And that though of course there is an aspect of adversariness and difference between the two positions, it would seem to me the more that you can still be acting in love and not in an adversarial way, as though it's two teams and they have to choose, but more just continuing to stand by the principles that you have confidence in and that you're inviting them to see, and you have the same attitude towards your wife. But in any case, my prayers go with you.
Ryan, thank you very, very much for the call. We are talking about being man of the household. You don't have to be a man to call, however, if you're a woman, have a question about this or want to make a comment, or if you maybe, if you're raising boys and you want to, or girls, I suppose, too, and you would like to get from a truly Christian philosopher a sense of what the family is and how it is meant to function and what we need to do to prepare ourselves to take up our role in the family, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Our topic this hour, being man of the household. Our guest, Dr. John Cuddeback. And up next, we go to Jeff in Bryan, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I was just wondering, me and my wife, we have a happy relationship and we have a son, and I'm definitely the leader of the household. She looks to me and everything. But what does the church say, or because sometimes we make the same amount monetarily, and we'd like to have more kids, and ultimately we like her to stay at home with the kids, but it's just not possible monetarily, and sometimes I get a feeling of inferiority when it comes to being the man of the house, and just because that's not possible, even though I try to make it possible every day. But what are just some advice?
Yep.
Or what does the church say, or something like that?
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Again, great question. Deserves better than I'll be able to say. But I feel like the first thing, Jeff, is you are the man of the house. Don't second guess yourself just because you're not able to do everything that you want to do. Doesn't mean that you're not the man of the house. You know what you're trying to do. You're living in a very difficult time, and you're going to try your best. So sometimes economic necessities are going to make certain things be that you would rather not have be. So first of all, I'd say don't be too hard on yourself. This is a tricky thing. One of the tough questions is, how do we think about economic necessity? I can't speak directly into your situation, but just speak in universals. Sometimes I think the standards and expectations of our society at times make us think that we need to have more of a financial position in order to have this child or the next child than perhaps is so. I'm not at all suggesting that's what you're saying, but just be careful. Ask the Lord for guidance and direction to really see clearly what you're able to do there. Then again, just do your best, be faithful, and the Lord's going to bless your good intentions.
Thanks, Jeff. You can hear the music. We got to take a quick break, and lots of folks on the line to talk about being the man of the household. More after this.
Everybody's favorite Catholic outer space delivery pilots return for their greatest adventure yet in the brand new graphic novel Weapons of War. Fresh from saving the solar system in The Truth Is Out There and saving the timeline of salvation history in The Big Picture, Brendan and Irk land in a magnificent domed city on Mars for what is supposed to be a simple shuttle job. But soon they find themselves caught up in a sinister assault on faith and freedom. Will Mars be lost to the enemy? Brendan and Irk's only hope for the flight is in the power of God's sacramental gifts. A totally new kind of Catholic resource for apologetics and evangelization, The Truth Is Out There series combines the visual excitement and quirky humor of graphic novels with solid popular philosophy and theology. The result is a series in which everyone from teens to adults can find accessible answers to questions about God, the soul, true happiness, and much more. Order your copy of Weapons of War today by calling 844-239-4952, by visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. the Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
If you're a Catholic who sometimes gets intimidated by the Bible, Jimmy Akin's The Bible is a Catholic Book will help you better understand and take pride in this gift that God gave the world through the Church. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Catholics are the original Bible Christians. Order your copy of The Bible as a Catholic Book today by calling 844-239-4952, by visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team asks, what little things have made the biggest difference in your life?
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. A little something different on this Thursday. So if you're expecting open forum, we'll do that second hour. Jimmy Akin's going to be in here second hour, and we're happy to take any question you have on the life, the faith, the people of the Catholic Church. This hour, we have the wonderful opportunity to talk with philosopher John Cuddeback from Christendom College. We're talking about our topic for the hour is being man of the household. If you have questions in that regard, 888-31-TRUTH is our number. There's a... I mentioned at the beginning Dr. Cuddeback's websites. You can go to Bacon from Acorns. If you just type in Bacon from Acorns, I can tell you there's not like 20 different sites with that name. You're going to come upon it. But you can also go to life-craft.org to get all of this information. And there's a course there, a course that men can take on taking up this role as man of the household. And right now, because he's here with us, you can get $25 off on that code. Just go to life-craft.org, click on the course, and then put in a promo code CA25. CA is for Catholic Answers, so you can remember that. CA25, that gives you $25 off on the course. And Dr. Cuddeback, you have kind of a plan there, a plan for taking up this role, really, of being man of the household. And are there specifics in there that will help?
Yeah, it can be downloaded there at the Man of the Household page there at the site, and I've put this together over time here, working with men, and it's just we all key to being man of the household is to be able to think clearly about what it is that we're going to do to form the family, the household that we want to have, and so I give general principles and also get pretty specific, right down to things like look for 2 or 3. Things to do in the household together that would be some type of good work, whether it's gardening, whether it's carpentry, painting together, something that is a good work, that'd be a good context for being together as a family. I suggest making a hearth in the household, some type of place in the home that's going to be a good place that you can gather, and how to be very intentional about, hey, we need to have a place in the household where we can be present to one another. More and more, it's so hard to have the home be a place of life. And if a husband and a wife, especially together, can be intentional about that, man particularly being willing to step up and show that interest, it will be a key to transforming the whole community.
And you can just download that.
You can download that for free at the website.
Life-craft.org, life-craft.org. Lots more folks on the line. So we go back to the calls. Maggie in South Carolina, listening on Carolina Catholic Radio. You are next. Maggie, your question for Dr. Cuddeback.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. I don't have so much a question as a very sympathetic response to your first caller. He was heartbreaking. I wanted to offer the perspective of the 12-year-old child who grew up in a very similar situation. My parents had an extremely bitter divorce, and my mother did everything in her power to alienate us from my father. She hid letters, she hid gifts. For years, this went on and on. But the point is my father was an exceptionally solid Roman Catholic. And if you could say anything about him, it was his faith. And some of my strongest childhood memories are going to Mass. First as a family, and then when things broke down, going with him alone when, I had visitation with him. And his life was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just buried in September.
Mm.
And the point I want to make to your caller is that over his lifetime, he did everything right. He was solid. He was stern when he needed to be. He never gave up in trying to hunt us down. And even with all of the craziness that I went through in my second home of origin, he, in my mind, was always there and always present and always solid.
Wow, Maggie,
And
what a
even
testament!
Yeah.
What an extraordinary testament to a father.
That was beautiful.
And I feel Maggie is pointing to exactly the kind of manhood that you're trying to point us to.
Indeed, and that it might not take place in perfect circumstances.
No, right.
But we can always be faithful in whatever circumstances, and it's no matter what, it's gonna take suffering, and God will bless us. There's nothing so beautiful as beautiful parenting. The good father, the good mother. It's just such a beautiful reflection of God's love for us.
Maggie, it sounded like you might wanted to finish up your comment. Did you have one more thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, there was one other thing. I wanted to share that the fruit of my father's suffering and endurance and loyalty and all of that is I am now a third order Discalced Carmelite.
Wow. Oh, praise God, Maggie. So many fathers right now are praising God for that, because we do, there's a lot of dads worried about their kids and praying so hard for them and wanting that good, that good above all other goods, the presence of Jesus in their lives. It's wonderful to have your testimony. Thank you very, very much, Maggie. However, I got to keep moving, Maggie, so I hope you'll be patient with me moving on, because there's lots of folks who want to talk with Dr. Cuddeback. Let's go to Martha in Grand Rapids, Michigan, listening on Holy Family Radio. Martha, thank you so much for your call, your question for Dr. Cuddeback.
Hi, Dr. Cuddeback. Thanks for taking my call.
Great to hear you.
I just kind of had a general question. I am married, and my husband and I are both very Catholic. We both come from divorced families, and I don't know that either one of us has a really good, solid, masculine role model in our life, but we would like to be. We have a 2-year-old son, but there's no good person in our life that is kind of an image of that outside of, obviously, the church and the saints. But I just kind of wondered if you had any recommendations on books or novels or movies that we could have available as our kids are growing up, our son and any future kids, to kind of show what good masculinity, what solid fatherhood should look like.
Oh, I'm sorry, right off the bat, Atticus Finch comes into my mind. But anybody,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like he's the greatest father in movie history.
That's great. And
that's
of course,
from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. That is a great question. I wish I were better prepared to answer. In fact, I am committed to gathering resources like that. And actually, I'm going to put those resources on my website when I have gathered more. It isn't easy. We were just over lunch, we were talking about a book called Little Britches. And I'll just mention that it's just a beautiful Colorado ranching kind of autobiography, forgetting at the moment the name of the author, but a great, for young people, a beautiful American story. There's others like that have just right at the moment are not coming to mind. May I just circle back? Because you said, other than the church and the saints, and you're right to look for other, like, so for instance, Little Britches isn't particularly a religious story, but it's nice sometimes just to have simple images of a ranching family doing things well, right? And so I agree, we do want to look beyond only going to the saints. But nonetheless, I just recommend meditate on St. Joseph and the Holy Family. And I'm not trying to go, as it were, hyper pious on this. And I'm doing it in part because I'm going to gather that I want to follow up with you, and I hope to be able to help you on that. But there's more that you can do than you think by just, we're coming off the Christmas season here, of thinking of meditating on St. Joseph, being told in the dream, now I've got to go to Egypt. We have enough of the story of St. Joseph's life that if you just sit down and imagine it and run the drill, there's so much that a father can learn, and we all can learn about what a man does, even though not so much is said and he doesn't say anything. There's more food for meditation that we can learn from than we might have thought. So I don't have more concrete things to suggest at the moment, but I hope to be able to follow up with you on that.
Martha, the book Little Britches, Nick will probably put it on the, we usually, any book that's cited, we put it on the show notes page. I looked it up, Ralph Moody.
Oh, thank you.
The author.
Yep.
And Britches, just want to make sure we're pronouncing it right. Thanks. Martha, all right?
And Martha, say, if I think of another, if it pops in my head later in the show, I'll say it even though you're gone.
Okay.
That sounds great. I'll keep listening. Thank you.
God bless you, sister. Thank you very, very much for the call. We got to take a quick break. I'm supposed to tell you about this, though. I keep forgetting to stress this, and I want to keep sharing it. It's Sanctity of Life Month here. We've got that ebook. It's a free ebook for you, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, Pro-Life Answers for Everyone. If you go to our website, shop.catholic.com, you get because it's free, that means you get it for nothing. So just click on the banner at shop.catholic.com and get that free ebook, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, Pro-Life Answers for Everyone.
Your questions, Catholic Answers, live.
Catholic Answers Live is proudly supported by CatholicChemistry.com, a new dating site for Catholics who want to do dating right and believe relationships start with Catholic chemistry. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicChemistry.com for their generous support on the web at CatholicChemistry.com.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul's Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
New on EWTN Radio, The Church Alive.
This is St. Monica, who I think is one of those great role models for so many mothers today.
My mother passed on to eternal life 8 years ago on the Feast of St. Monica. And you know, what a powerful example for me, because I know she prayed me back to the church.
The Church Alive with Brian Patrick, Dr. Matthew Bunson, and Father Thomas Petrie. Saturday at 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
I guess probably the most straightforward way to say it is, if you're being a father in the way that our society currently depicts fathers, you need another model. You need a different model, and that's part of, and that's true for being a husband as well. So being man of the household in the way that John Cuddeback is talking about and teaching about now at life-craft.org is meant to help us have that model. You got any other tips for us about what kids need from us that maybe they're not getting from Homer Simpson or from those dads?
How about this one? The first most important thing that our children need from the man of the household is the man of the household love his wife very well. I once heard it said, and I couldn't agree more, the most important first thing you can do for your children as their fathers to love their mother. And I think at times men focus so much on, oh my gosh, I have to be a good dad, I have to be a good dad. The first step in being dad is to be a good husband. And our wives need us first, and we need to be constantly rededicate ourselves to them and discerning what do they need. Here's a good question for everyone, is to ask ourselves to meditate on, what does my wife need me to do for her to help her life be better? There's one to meditate on. And then just another quick one. What do our children need? Our children need us to be spending more time with them, of course, than we are. But another thing that's easy to forget is they also need us to exercise authority well. Sometimes that's harder. Going out in the backyard and throwing the ball is absolutely key. But sometimes it takes more out of us to be willing to step up and to act with authority. That doesn't necessarily mean at all adversarial or be overpowering, but authority is always guiding. Authority is always about guiding to that person's happiness. It's about playing your role in directing towards that person's true flourishing, happiness, and holiness. They need our teaching, and they need our strength in guiding them to that. That is central to being man of the household.
Again, Professor John Cuddeback, our guest. You can find him at Bacon from Acorns. You can also find him at life-craft.org. We go now to Terry in Houston, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Terry, your question for Dr. Cuddeback.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'm in a position I think a lot of people in the country are today. Was divorced. My ex-husband passed away 2 years ago. And a lot of our problems were due to mental illness, and so he never took a traditional male role in the household, and certainly not after the divorce. I'm the primary breadwinner, the person who calls for appliance repairs and new siding, and you name it, I have to handle all of it. I have 2 sons and a daughter. One is 20 now and 17-year-old sons, and my daughter's going to be 15. And my worry all along has been, without any kind of good, strong role model and seeing their mom do both roles, how do I prepare them to not expect their wife to be in the kind of position they've grown up seeing me be in? How do I prepare my daughter not to think that this is the role she has to take in a marriage, that she has to really be both sides?
Yeah. What a great question. Terry, the first thing I think to say is God will bless you for your faithfulness. Children, they'll see. You are obviously having to step up in a way that isn't the normal, natural situation, although it happens regularly. I'd say have confidence. Your daughter or your daughters, they'll see that. They'll honor you for what you're doing, and they'll recognize that ultimately it's about God's fatherhood. God is a father to all of us. The parents, human parents, are always in some sense just standing in for God. So always think it's such a beautiful and challenging paradox. In God's natural plan, it's such an important role for the father and the mother in the children's life. But it's not as though it's absolutely irreplaceable. God's plan will always still allow some other way. He will see that his fatherhood can be conveyed, because that is the ultimate reality. And so in some sense, you're standing in for a father, and you're even part of kind of passing that on, even while you are just a mother. And you're being a mother, a great mother, in a very difficult circumstance. So you keep being faithful, and I dare say, leave the rest to God, and you'll see things. They'll see the other men. They'll learn from other examples. This is, I think, the way that it happens.
Terry, God bless you. I hope you do feel encouraged by what Dr. Cuddeback said about God blessing you. I do feel somewhat sensitive, though. I got to get to everybody, so I'm going to keep moving. I hope that was helpful to you, Terry. We're talking about being man of the household with Professor John Cuddeback, who has a brand new course on that on his website, life-craft.org. Let's try Jim in Indianapolis, listening on EWTN.com. Jim, thank you for your call, your question for Dr. Cuddeback.
Hello, and thanks for taking the call.
Hi, Jim.
Back to Ryan, your first caller. I was abandoned 20 years or so ago by a spouse, but the children did grow up. They're healthy. They're happy. So try not to despair too much about that. My question really is about now that the children are grown, what is the role of the father who is separated from their mother? Is it any different from a father who is together with the mother?
Well, again, a great question. Surely it will be different, but then surely there's also a real sameness. You know, something that I love that St. Thomas says, he says, in God's wonderful plan, parenting is lifelong. It just has different stages. And so you'll be able to discover, and I'm sure you already are, if you're a grandparent, the unique things that only a grandparent can provide. Even if, as regards, though, your children, what the aging parent provides by still being involved, ongoing wisdom, and then if in God's providence it'd be that you start to ail and your children have the opportunity to take care of you, that's a gift too. God's plan is so amazing if we're just faithful, no matter how difficult the circumstances become, you will still be able to be a father. And yeah, it's going to look a little different than if your wife were still with you, but you're still a father, and you'll be a father to your children. You'll be a grandfather to your grandchildren, and there'll be amazing ways that'll keep being revealed to you until the day you die, because you're always a father.
Jim, thank you very, very much for the call. I do have a second here. I can get your reaction. Does that help you?
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, it falls in line with the way I feel about, being a father. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, and God bless you. Just this theme of, I think there are a lot of people who want to do it, who want to provide the home to a spouse, to children, whether it's a man or a woman. But we're all kind of a mess in this moment in our society. There's a lot of abandonment. There's a lot of loneliness and brokenness. But it's really, to me, very inspiring to hear people still plugging away faithfully.
Right.
And
it's so key. We just keep being faithful, even when it seems that God's plan is not happening the way it's supposed to. God's plan is always, His loving providence is still working.
Anonymous caller. All right, Anonymous, are you there with us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Your question, please.
It's kind of mostly a cultural question about how masculinity should operate in I guess, maybe culture is too big of a word, but I guess a scenario or an environment of immodesty, whether we're talking, I guess pornography at the large scale or, just walking into the shopping mall and seeing other things, at the smaller scale, how that kind of functions with masculinity from even a young age, teenage or adolescent, seeing those type of things, and then trying to, I guess, compose them as you're growing up and things like that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I have a quick thought for you. Fatherhood, being a husband and being a father, is about loving well. It's about serving. It's about completely giving yourself, just as God does, God our Father. And central to empowering us to do that is restraint, moderation, especially not only in the area of chastity. Unchastity directly undermines our ability to be a good husband and a good father. And so here's extra inspiration to cultivate restraint in ourselves. A man, central to a true man's strength, is his loving willingness to control his own desires, to be self-sacrificing, and that empowers him to be able to love well. And so the best we can, we try to model this, and we try to set up situations to encourage restraint, modesty, and chastity. And we can always start again. We can always start again. However we've fallen, we can begin now to cultivate that virtue so as to be able to empower fatherhood.
Anonymous, how's that?
It sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Very good. I sometimes think we live in this, what Anonymous was pointing to, a hypersexualized culture, designed to use stimulus basically to get us to buy stuff or go places, but really the basic mechanics of being a male have not changed that much. This is perennially part of the task of mature malehood, is integrating what is very, very difficult to integrate.
But the problem is today we deny that. At least in the past, even if many people were failing, it was understood that this is key, that this is what men should be striving to do. Now we pretend as though you can be a real man and be pursuing your sexual desires.
Yes,
and
that's a good
it's
point.
Being a man, as I just tried to express it, presupposes chastity. Chastity isn't the heart of the matter, but it's a protector. It's a preserver. It underlies your being able to then act with wisdom, strength, to direct and love your wife, your children, anybody.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's probably a large segment of the population who would say, well, that's backward thinking. I mean, we even have that weird kind of Freudian hydraulics. Like if you press down on that, it's going to come out somewhere else.
Right.
You're going to, which is really an insane view of what it is to be a human being. Dr. John Cuddeback is our guest. I want to give you the information again because this is very much worth having. I'm a subscriber to his Bacon from Acorns podcast. I get the emails when there are, blog. I get the emails when the new ones are out. And it's about living as a fully and truly human person in a world that is dehumanizing. And that's how I kind of contextualize all of your work. The new project is at LifeCraft. It's called LifeCraft. It's at life-craft.org. And I would like to encourage you, men and women, but most particularly with this new project on being man of the household for men, to take a look at that. As I said earlier, you can get $25 off on Dr. Cuddeback's course on being man of the household just by going to the website life-craft.org. And when you open up to pay for the course, you'll get $25 off if you put in the promo code CA25. I also want to invite folks, if you're going to be in San Diego tomorrow night, Friday, January 17th, 7 to 9 p.m. at Mother Rosalie Hill Hall in Warren Auditorium over at the University of San Diego. Dr. Cuddeback is going to give a special talk detoxing your family from tech. Detoxing your family from tech. We're going to film it. We're going to make a wonderful filmed version of it and make it available to people. So, Dr. Cuddeback, all I can say is thanks very much.
Great to be with you. Thank you, Si.
Very, very nice to be with you. And don't worry, coming up next, Jimmy Akin here, for open forum next hour or so. If you've been just saying, I've got to ask my Council of Florence question, or I've got to ask my Filioque question, or whatever else you've been sitting on for this hour, we're going to get into all of it next hour. 888-318-7884, the number. I see Jimmy now walking into the building. We'll see you right on the other side of this for more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live. All right, welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's time for some open forum. Thanks to all of you who had those open forum questions and held them for the first hour, but it's second hour now, and it's open forum time. Open forum means anybody can call, except for people in Delaware. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. No, even people in Delaware can call. I've been corrected. Everyone can call from anywhere, whether you're Catholic or not. If you have a question about Catholic beliefs, about the Bible, about saints and prophets, or if you have a question about quantum mechanics or, I don't know, the proper temperature at which to store cheese, we have Jimmy Akin here.
Hey,
so you can
how's
ask
it
those as well.
going?
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi there. And if you've got a superphone, you can call from anywhere in space and time.
How far can this? Oh, superphone can call from
anywhere in the space-time continuum.
Wow, that must not work like a cell phone.
Extreme roaming. Yeah.
What are the charges on that though? Like if you call from the Middle Ages, what are the charges? The charges must be crazy.
It's never been a problem before.
Well, you're independently wealthy. Given the many times you've won the California lottery.
I don't have a superphone.
Oh, you don't have one?
No.
Oh, it was just a
But I've seen
hypothetical.
people who do on TV.
In addition to knowing all about superphones, Jimmy Akin is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of many books, including his latest book, The Bible is a Catholic Book, which I'll probably give it away to some people this hour. I don't know.
Cool.
And then also the podcaster behind the podcast that is sweeping the podcast world, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World.
Ooh, cool.
What's up this time?
Tomorrow we have, so the most recent episode was on the differences between religion, magic, psychic phenomena, and science. The new episode that's dropping, so that one's out there now if you want to listen to it. The new one that's dropping tomorrow morning is on alien implants.
Oh,
so these
people
are
get abducted.
foreign objects that people find in their bodies.
Yeah.
They think that they are maybe put there by aliens, and then some of them have been surgically removed and scientifically tested.
Oh, that's
and
perfect for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World.
Because there are ways if you found weird isotope ratios in these things, it could indicate they're made from material that didn't come from our solar system. So
could they be part of a superphone, perhaps?
It could be.
Or maybe the alien's keeping track of you. 888-318-7884, the number 888-318-7884. Should we go to the phones? I mean,
sure, why
feel
not?
Like there's so many people that we cut it down to 1 hour today. So let's go to Francisco in South Carolina. Hang on, Francisco. I just got to get to the phone. Francisco, your question.
Hi, thank you guys. You are amazing. I have a question about Romans. Thank you guys. Definitely great. Romans 3:23. And I think it's 3:23. Yes, I want to know how the magisterium of the Catholic Church interpreted this verse to give Mary to declare Mary without sin.
Well, the magisterium doesn't have an official interpretation of this verse. The magisterium has very few interpretations of particular verses that it's signed off on as this is what we teach it means. And even those, it doesn't claim to exhaust the meaning of the verse, just here's something it definitely does teach or definitely doesn't. In this case, what the church does have is principles of doctrine that it teaches, and as long as you're not violating the principle of doctrine, you can interpret most Bible verses however you see the evidence pointing towards. So whatever you think the evidence supports, as long as it's not contradicting a doctrine of the church, you can hold that interpretation. So there are a variety of different possible interpretations of Romans 3:23. And for people who may not be familiar with this verse, this is the famous verse that says, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
So you read it in now there are a number of possible ways of reading it. First of all, if you back up a verse, and so we're getting some of the context for it, let me make another point initially. So if all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, Psychelet, does that include Jesus?
All would seem to include Jesus because all means all.
Yeah, it does. So this is an illustration of how we have to be sensitive to what's sometimes called the universe of discourse. The universe of discourse is the set of things that are under discussion. For example, if I'm talking about the items that are on this table, I might say there are two computers because I have a computer and you have a computer at the table we're sitting at. But you couldn't infer, and I could say that's all the computers there are. But that wouldn't mean that's all the computers in the universe. It just means in the universe of discourse, the set of things on the table, two computers is all there are. And so we know that because Jesus is sinless and did not fall short of the glory of God, we know that Paul here in Romans 3:23 is using a restricted universe of discourse. He is not talking about all people. Mm-hmm. And so the question then becomes, well, what universe of discourse is he using in this verse? So you back up a verse, you get some of the context. He's talking about how righteousness comes from God, justification comes through God, and he says, this righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So he's talking about two categories of people, and that may just mean that may exhaust what he means. All Jews and Gentiles, or as a people, Jews have fallen and Gentiles have fallen into sin. But that doesn't mean every single Jew has, because Jesus was a Jew.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. Also, you keep reading after this verse, and or I should say, if you back up a little bit to get even more context, you start reading at verse 10, we have a series of quotations of the Old Testament, like, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned astray. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. You keep reading, and you look up these passages in the Old Testament, and what you find is that in every case, it's from what you could call a contrast text, where the passage, like one of them is from the psalm that starts, the fool says in his heart there is no God.
Yes, right.
And then it goes on to say none of those people seek God, and they all sin. And so he's not talking about all people. He's talking about people who deny the existence of God. And then it goes on to, in the same psalm, to contrast the behavior of these wicked people with the behavior of the righteous that God is going to preserve and protect from the wicked. And so you have a contrast in that psalm between the wicked who sin and the righteous who God protects. And you look at every one of those quotations of the Old Testament, they are all found in the in contrast texts.
Okay.
And so that's part of the context of what Paul then goes on to discuss about how both Jews and Gentiles have sinned. Now, almost every Jew has sinned. Almost every Gentile has sinned. But not every single person has sinned, because we know Jesus didn't. And if you read further in Romans, if you look in Romans 9, Paul talks about how when Jacob and Esau were in the womb, there was a time before they had done anything good or bad. So there was a time before they had sinned. Because they were unborn children, they didn't have the capacity to make moral decisions. So there's a time in everybody's life before they've sinned. So not only has Jesus not sinned, and he's not part of the universe of discourse that Paul's talking about, but unborn children have not sinned and are not part of the universe of discourse Paul is talking about either. So could we imagine there being an exception for Mary? Well, why is Jesus not a sinner? It's because he's the Son of God, and he's the second Adam, which is a theme that Paul stresses
the new Adam.
A number of times. He's the new Adam. But Mary is the new Eve. And so if there's an exception to this principle for the new Adam, there can be an exception to this principle for the new Eve. Now, this doesn't prove Mary was sinless, but it does show that this verse does not prove that she had to sin either. The sinlessness of Mary is based on other information that we have, particularly passed down through the church fathers, but this passage does not disqualify Mary as being a sinner.
Francisco, we're going to leave it there because it is break time already. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features daily Mass, prayers, articles, and meditations in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church. On the web at magnificat.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Dematteis and Aaron Richards is our show for young adults.
Everybody's talking about encounter. Everybody's talking about that mountaintop experience. What we fail to often talk about is what happens after, what happens beyond that Damascus moment.
Jesus Christ is calling all of us to be missionary disciples, disciples of Jesus who are on mission to bring the kingdom of God here and now on this earth.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Dematteis and Aaron Richards, Saturday at 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
The first online course, Beginning Apologetics, in our Catholic Answers School of Apologetics is available. It's taught by our guest this hour, senior apologist Jimmy Akin. In the course, Jimmy distills the essential insights from his more than a quarter century of doing apologetics professionally. And we guarantee that even seasoned defenders of the faith will learn things they didn't know before. We're offering an introductory price that saves you $30 if you sign up right now. Don't procrastinate. It's going to go away soon, this introductory price. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. Schoolofapologetics.com today and sign up for the brand new Catholic Answers School of Apologetics. First course out now, Beginning Apologetics, taught by our very own senior apologist, Jimmy Akin. Open forum means open forum. That means anybody can call and we'll take whatever question you've got, even if you are a character in a what's that stuff called now?
Anime?
Anime, yeah, in an anime. So Gohan is next from Houston, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Gohan, you with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, yeah, so I picked the name because I called into a couple of atheist shows with the same question. And I don't want, my actual name to be out there in case people want to fire me for something.
Oh, I thought you were the actual Gohan from Dragon Ball Z, but okay.
I wish.
Go ahead, your question.
Yes, sir. So I called in, asked atheists the same question. I have their responses in my head. I'd like to kind of hear from pro-life stance other than my own.
Sure.
So I asked them, I know a couple of them are pro-choice, even if they see the fetus as a person. Mm-hmm. So this was a question to kind of attack that pro-choice stance other than personhood. It was about if aborting the fetus is okay, then it should be okay to separate. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's okay. It's okay. We're all friends here.
Conjoined twins that have now become an adult, maybe 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
One is dependent on the other. Mm-hmm. The other one would be fine if they separate, no problem. I'd kind of like to hear your response.
Okay. So the situation is going to depend on a variety of factors. One of the factors is going to be how dependent the second conjoined twin is on the first. If it's a form of dependency that can be compensated for by medical technology, and these days, within a generation or two, you're going to be able to separate virtually any conjoined twin, because even if it's, let's say, dependent on the first twin for heart function, we're going to have artificial hearts.
Yeah.
Or kidneys. We're working on artificial kidneys now. I mean, that's called a dialysis machine.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, can you make it small enough to put in your body? Artificial liver, artificial lungs, all of those things are going to be available. And so this is an issue that has a sunset built into it, assuming horrible things don't happen. But we're not there yet. So suppose that you have a conjoined twin who does need to remain joined in order to remain alive. Are there situations in which it could be reasonable to detach that twin? Well, the answer is yes, there are. Because suppose that twin number 2, the one that's dependent, it has developed gangrene or cancer or something that will kill twin number 1 if not detached. What you can't do is deliberately kill twin number 2. But according to standard pro-life understanding of things, you can detach an entity that foreseeing that it will die. This is the case in the situation of an ectopic pregnancy. In an ectopic pregnancy, you have an unborn child who accidentally embeds in the mother's fallopian tube instead of in the uterus and proceeds to grow there. And if the child is not detached, then it will rupture, it will gravely harm and maybe kill the mother, and the child is definitely going to die anyway. So theologians have looked at that and said you can detach the child. You can't deliberately kill it, but you can detach it knowing that its death is going to ensue. In this case, there's a principle of moral theology known as the law of double effect that is met. According to the law of double effect, you can do something that will have a negative consequence, like the death of the child, provided certain conditions are met. One of the conditions is you're not desiring the negative effect of itself. So you can't remove the ectopic child because you want the child dead. Neither can you use the negative effect as a means to some other end. So you couldn't directly attack the child. You couldn't be using it for some other end, but you could remove it in this grave circumstance, knowing that as a result of the removal, the child will die because the child is not yet able to survive outside the womb. This is another issue with the sunset clause because we've already got generation 1 artificial wombs. They're called incubators. Yeah. And in the future, they're only going to get better, and we will be able to just move the child to an artificial womb. But we can't do that right now for very young children, and so it is legitimate in this kind of situation to detach as opposed to kill, to detach the child, foreseeing that the child's death will result because there's no way to stop it. This is the only way to prevent grave harm. So if you had a situation where you had a conjoined twin who's dependent on another twin, and that conjoined twin, like the unborn ectopic baby, is going to die anyway and is going to kill in the process or gravely harm twin number 1, then you could hypothetically detach twin number 2, foreseeing that twin number 2 will pass away as a result of that. You can't directly kill twin number 2, but you could detach twin number 2 in at least some circumstances because it would be a direct analogy for an ectopic pregnancy.
Go ahead. Thank you very, very much for the call. Starting us off with a bit of
having said that, if you're not in such a situation, then you can't just detach somebody knowing they're going to die in the same way. So if twin number 2 is no threat to twin number 1, you don't have the grave reason to counterbalance the fact twin number 2 would die if detached. So glad I didn't have to go Super Saiyan on that.
Super what? So,
yeah.
a Dragon Ball Z reference. Thank you very much, Gohan. We're going out to Carlos in San Antonio, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Hi, Carlos.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you both?
Very well. Thank you, Carlos.
Okay, great. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much and both of you, for all the work that you do. My question is a Catholic question.
Mm-hmm.
So last year at my parish, I was blessed to be able to give some basic talks on beginning apologetics, because I'm kind of an amateur apologist myself, and I've used many of your own resources to help my vision here. So, in between then and now, I've already finished the Jimmy's online school of apologetics. So my question is, thank you. I've been asked to continue it. So my question is, Jimmy, do you have any guidance or suggestions or advice on how to begin a beginning apologetics, basic level apologetics ministry at a small parish? And if so, do you recommend any particular resources that would be suitable for a group setting?
Well, one thing, and I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I know one thing that we have planned for the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics is for group use. And if after this call, we'll get your email address so I can put you in touch with the right people to see if we're able to do that right now. But we have always wanted to be able to use like our online School of Apologetics courses in a group setting. So I know there are plans for that, and I just don't know if those have fully materialized yet. Another resource that you could consider using is Jim Burnham's Beginning Apologetics series, which is a set of kind of magazine-size booklets that you could base a study around. We've got a lot of materials here at Catholic Answers that would be suitable for such use. There's the book Why We're Catholic by Trent Horn, which is available in bulk, so it's easy. I think it's like $3 a copy if you get a case of 20, so you can get a case of that, share them around, go through it a chapter at a time, reading it with people. My own book, The Bible is a Catholic Book, is designed that way. A Daily Defense.
Yeah.
Is another one that could be used in a group setting. So we've got a lot of resources in terms of organizing it. Obviously, you need the parish's permission if you're going to be doing it on parish property. They can help you. I mean, they've got staff there to help the programs that are being run out of the church, like putting things in the bulletin or putting flyers up on the poster board or getting time in the announcements to announce it to people. But basically, I would talk to the parish and take advantage of the promotional opportunities that they can offer you to try to help build interest in the program.
Carlos, if you can stay on the line, Assistant Producer Marie will get the information so that, as Jimmy said, we can send you that. If we can get in contact with you about the possibility of using it in a group format. I'd also like to send you a couple of Jimmy's books. The Daily Defense, I think, would be a wonderful one for you to have, and the latest book, The Bible is a Catholic Book. So if you'll just let Marie know where we can send that, we'd be happy to send those off to you. Our number, 888-318-7884. It is an open forum, and up next is Vicki in Cleveland, Ohio, listening on 1260 AM The Rock. Vicki, your question for Jimmy.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, I am not Catholic, but I'm becoming very interested in Catholicism, and I want to get a Catholic Bible, but I don't know which is the best one to get.
Well, it depends on a number of things. Let me ask you a kind of a basic question. Because there are some translations that are newer, and then there are translations that are older, and some people prefer the older style translations. Like in the Protestant community, some people really like the King James Bible because of how dignified it sounds. Other people are not as much of a fan of the King James Bible because it's using English from 400 years ago, and so it's a little harder to read. What's your preference, Vicki? Do you like the older style translations or the newer style translations?
Actually, I kind of like the older ones.
Okay. Well, there's an equivalent. There's a Catholic equivalent of the King James Bible. It's called the Douay-Rheims Bible. And it actually came out just a few years before the King James did. In fact, it's interesting if you read the original preface that the King James translators wrote to their readers, they mention this Catholic Bible that had come out a few years earlier. It's because it's public domain, you can find it on websites and you could take a look at it. Just type in Douay. It's usually spelled Douay, but you could type in Douay Bible. You could read a little bit of it online, see if you like it, and then you could buy a physical copy if you want. Got a little bit more to say, but we'll cover it on the other side of the break.
Hang on if you can, Vicki. Thanks very much. Jimmy Akin is our guest. It's open forum. 888-31-TRUTH is our number. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, about the Bible, Catholic people, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884.
Hello, this is Archbishop Alexander Sample of the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon. Keep that dial right here on Catholic Answers Live.
Every Catholic has heard the challenge. How can you believe that? Don't you know the Bible says? It's a challenge we have to meet. If we can't reconcile apparent contradictions between Scripture and Catholic teaching, how can our faith survive? And if we can't answer our Protestant brothers and sisters, how will they ever come to embrace the fullness of the faith? In Meeting the Protestant Challenge, apologist Carlo Broussard gives you the knowledge and tools you need to answer 50 of the most common Bible-based objections to Catholicism. Be prepared to give an answer. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Challenge today by calling 844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Many Catholics ignore the Bible. They say they have the Church instead. But we should embrace sacred Scripture, not just as the revealed Word of God, but as a Catholic work, intimately connected with the Church from the earliest centuries. In The Bible as a Catholic Book, apologist Jimmy Akin shows how the Bible cannot exist apart from the Church, in its origins, in the truths it contains, in its careful preservation over the centuries. Scripture is inseparable from the Catholic faith. This is fitting, since both come from God for our salvation. If you're a Catholic who sometimes gets intimidated by the Bible as a Catholic Book will help you better understand and take pride in this gift that God gave the world through the Church. After all, Catholics are the original Bible Christians. Order your copy of The Bible as a Catholic Book today by calling 1-844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team asks, what little things have made the biggest difference in your life?
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Oh, yeah. Groovy music.
Because it's Thursday.
Yeah, nice going, Nick. All on your own, or did somebody remind you? That you just remembered?
He's got a memory, that boy.
Nice. Yay. Jimmy's here. I love it. It always makes me feel so good when the groovy music plays and Jimmy's here. It just all feels good.
It just has a problem, though, that's like this one moment in Dvorak's New World Symphony.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah,
wait,
because
what?
There's this moment in Dvorak's New World Symphony where the music has been building and swelling and the violins just soar, and then it's over. And they move on to a new musical concept. And it's like, no, that violin soar needs to just go on and on and on and on and on. Same thing with the groovy music, Nick.
Someday surprise us, Nick, by looping it.
A supercut.
Just let it keep going.
The super groovy supercut.
You're a sound man. You can loop it, right? Did you ever see the movie Looper? No? Okay, it's not about that anyway. All right, Vicky's on the phone. But Nick, we have to get back to work.
So, so I mentioned the Douay-Rheims Bible, which is a kind of Catholic equivalent of the King James, and Vicky, you might be interested in that. Also, one of the things to bear in mind is, and this is kind of a more recent translation, but it's also one that uses kind of more dignified language. It's called the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be familiar with the Revised Standard Version. There's also a new Revised Standard Version, but I'm not talking about that one. The Revised Standard Version originally was a Protestant Bible, but there's a Catholic edition of it. And there's a particular edition of this called the Ignatius Bible that has really good study notes. And so, like, if you get the Ignatius Study Bible, it will have some really informative, really helpful study notes from a Catholic perspective. So I would recommend the Ignatius Study Bible. I know they have the New Testament out, and I think you can get the Old Testament in individual volumes. But if you want like a one-volume version, you can get the New Testament. It's got lots of great information in the study notes.
Go ahead.
Also, I was going to say, Vicki, to help you remember the name Douay-Rheims, it's found in my book, The Bible is a Catholic Book. And since you're interested in the Catholic faith and interested in the Catholic Bible, why don't we get your address and send you a copy of The Bible is a Catholic Book?
How's that, Vicki?
Wonderful.
Very good, very good. Well, just hang on, because the lines are very, very busy, but Marie will get to you as quick as she can and get the information. We'll send you out a free copy of the Bible as a Catholic Book, and then maybe you can look into the Ignatius Study Bible or the Douay-Rheims and see what grabs you, and then call back sometime. We'd love to hear from you again, and because you said you're taking an interest in the Catholic Church, so
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you again. Okay, Vicki?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 888-318-7884, the number. John, right here in California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. John, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. By some strange quirk of history, we are here in California, but we're hardly on the air on any stations in California.
Not that we're not willing to be on stations
here.
We make this program available for free to any station in California or elsewhere who wants to put us on. If we're not on your station, it's because the station doesn't want to put us on.
But we'd be happy to. Like if you've got a station, perhaps, or we'll be happy to go on your station. But John, anyways, you did download the Catholic Answers Live app onto your phone, and you're here now. Your question, please.
Yes. Well, there's no station here where we can pick up your show, but anyways, my question is, can we Catholics attend like a Byzantine church and receive communion and do confession? Are we allowed to do that?
So, if it's a Byzantine Catholic church, absolutely yes. There are no restrictions on Catholics going to Byzantine Catholic churches. It doesn't matter if you're a Latin Rite Catholic or a Chaldean or Maronite Catholic. If you're a Catholic, you can go to a Byzantine Catholic church. You can receive the Eucharist. You can receive confession. You can receive the sacraments in general there. So, except maybe ordination. You'd probably want to transfer rights for that. If you mean a Byzantine Orthodox church, so one that's not Catholic, you can certainly attend there, but it won't fulfill your Sunday obligation. And also, you could receive communion there under limited circumstances, but not just as a regular thing. The church allows Catholics, like let's say you're in Turkey. Mm-hmm. And you're in a part of Turkey where they have a Byzantine Orthodox church, but there are no Catholic churches nearby. So you don't have the ability to receive communion in a Catholic church while you're there. Well, in that situation, because you can't approach a Catholic priest, you could receive 3 of the sacraments, confession, communion, and the anointing of the sick from a Byzantine Orthodox priest. But it needs to be a situation where you can't get to a Catholic church and do the same things.
Okay, John?
Okay. Thank you. That answered my question.
Awesome.
Thank you very, very much. Up next, Kaylin in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Kaylin, your question for Jimmy.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my question. So I am going through the RCIA process right now and was originally brought to Jesus through the Methodist Church. Have a number of folks who I look up to pretty heavily on the in different Protestant churches. Sure. And when I told one of those folks that I'm going through the RCIA process, he seemed pretty disappointed and almost upset, and was citing different Bible verses on things about faith through works, purgatory, a bunch of things that him and I disagree on a little bit. And my question was really how I can best resolve some of that. I don't know if combat's the right word, but hopefully that makes sense.
Well, there are a number of possibilities. One question that I would ask myself in this situation, because I've been in this situation, is this the right time to have this conversation with someone? I had a family member who I knew if I talked to this person about it would have a very negative reaction. And I concluded, I know what I need to do here, but I don't need to distress this person in this way, certainly not right now. So I just became Catholic. I didn't discuss it with the person. And I didn't make a secret of becoming Catholic. I let other people know in the family. And I know word eventually got around to this person, but we didn't have a confrontation about it. And it was never a problem. So sometimes just taking we don't need to directly confront this approach can work. Now, in this case, Kaylin, you've obviously talked to this person and they've had a negative reaction, but you can still say, well, is this the right time to continue that discussion? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. If you're confident and you think it would help this person to provide answers and you're willing to dig out those answers and, help the person see them, then that's fine. On the other hand, if that's a daunting prospect, you're not under an obligation to go further at this point with this person. You might say, I'm going to become Catholic. I'm going to learn more. And once I've learned more, then maybe I'll re-engage with this person, so that I'm not kind of at a disadvantage in terms of this person has had years in their position. I'm new with this Catholic stuff. Maybe it would be better to deal with this once I've learned some more. So that's a perfectly legitimate option as well. In terms of if you do want to engage the person, now you mentioned faith and works, and I've got a couple of things out on that could be of use. One is a book called The Drama of Salvation. Another is a little ebook that is on Amazon. If you type in Jimmy Akin, Faith and Works, a little ebook is available there for cheap that makes the point, that phrase, justification by faith and works, that people are always saying Catholics believe in. You know where that's found in church documents?
I can't think of it.
You can't because it's not in any church document. This is not a phrase the church actually uses. And helping your friend understand that could alleviate some of his concerns. Also, my book, A Daily Defense, covers, almost 400 different objections to the Catholic faith, many of which are made by Protestants, and it probably covers a lot of the material that a lot of the different objections that your friend would have, and so that could be a good resource as a starting point for finding brief answers for him that could help him out with some of his concerns.
Can we send the Drama of Salvation to Kaylin? Kaylin, how's that? Is that helpful to you?
Yeah, that helps a lot, actually. I'd be interested in reading that. So.
Okay, hang on the line. I'll make a note here to assistant producer Marie, and she'll make sure we get that out to you. Thank you very much, Kaylin. It's a pleasure talking with you, and God bless you as you work your way into full communion with the Catholic Church.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Amal in... oh, wait, no, I can't. Amal, sorry, you got to hang on a second. I didn't look at where I was on the clock. Sorry, Amal. Hang on. We're going to get to you as soon as we come back from this.
This is Harry Connick Jr., and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
He is honored by the Church as one of the greatest enemies of clergy sexual abuse.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
In his time, St. Peter Damian fought against the many vices of contemporary clergy, especially sexual abuses among the clergy. In 1051, he wrote the Book of Gomorrah that is still considered essential reading for fighting abuse today. He died in 1072.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
Welcome back to Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin is our guest. We already played the groovy music, so we're in a groovy mood around here. And now we go to Amal in Canada, watching on YouTube Live. Amal, thank you very much for your call. Your question for Jimmy.
Hi.
Hi, Amal.
I just wanted to ask, why does God expect and want us to have faith when it is uncertain and it can be prone to error, especially with a topic so important and lifelong?
Okay. So there are a few things I could say in response to this. One of them is faith is built in to human consciousness. There are limitations on human consciousness that mean in order for us to be functional human beings, we have to have faith. There are certain principles that everybody acts on, every living person acts on, that they can't prove. For example, every day you act on the principle that your food is not constantly poisoned by somebody. If you didn't act on that principle, you would starve to death. But you still can't prove that nobody has secretly slipped in and poisoned your food today. And so every time you eat, you make an act of faith that what you're eating has not been somehow surreptitiously poisoned by someone. We also have numerous other acts of faith that we perform. We have acts of faith that gravity is not going to suddenly stop working and that the sun is not going to suddenly go nova tonight so we can plan for tomorrow. We have other things that we have faith in, like logical principles, like the law of non-contradiction and things like that, and the principle of causation, that things have causes. It's not all random. And so faith is an inextricable part of human consciousness. Now, sometimes are we wrong when we have faith in something? Sure. If you have been acting on the principle that your food is not poisoned, well, one day it could be. You could have mistaken faith in that case. But the idea of having faith is not itself something we should be uncomfortable with because it's built into us. And in fact, as C.S. Lewis points out, he uses a different term for it. He refers to it as accepting things on authority, but he means accepting things by faith. Everything we haven't personally proved is something we accept on faith. C.S. Lewis, being from England, gave the example, I believe there is a New York City, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I accept it on the authority of the people who have told me about it.
Right.
And so virtually all, since we prove personally almost nothing that we believe, and even when we do prove something, it's based on other principles like the law of non-contradiction that we have faith in. Faith is just a fundamental part of what we do as human beings. And so it's not unreasonable for God to say, I want you to have faith in me too. And he'll give us evidence for that. Now, the thing is, you can say, well, why doesn't he give us more evidence than he does? Wouldn't it be nice? And this is where we get into a subcase of what's called the problem of evil, where we don't have something we'd like. In this case, it's a lack of knowledge that we wish we had, or a lack of evidence that we wish we had. And it's a mystery why precisely God has chosen to give us the level of evidence that he has. He could give us more evidence. As to why he doesn't, that's something people have speculated about. And some of the speculations have more merit, I think, than others. But he has given us a couple of guarantees about this evidence. One of them is based on the church's understanding, and this is an infallible teaching of the church. It is possible to prove the existence of God by human reason. So as long as you've got functional human reason, if you're open to the arguments for God's existence, this is not saying every one of them works, but some of them do work. And so if you're open to the evidence, you can prove that God exists. Then, if you're open, Jesus also says, if you're willing to do his Father's will, you'll get the evidence you need to find out if his teaching is true. So he says, if any man's will is, to do my Father's will, he'll find out if my teaching is true or not. So you've got a promise from Jesus. This is in John's Gospel, by the way. You got a promise from Jesus that if you're open and you're willing to do what God wants, then God will make sure you get the evidence you need one way or another. It may not be as much evidence as you'd like, but it's like the Rolling Stones song. You can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need. And so that's something to bear in mind. Also, God recognizes the principle, and this is something Jesus talks about, but God recognizes the principle that that how much you know affects your culpability. And so God wants us to have faith in him, but he recognizes that there are people who are innocently ignorant of the fact that he exists. And for those people who are innocently ignorant, who, let's say they're little children who grew up in Hindu society or something, where they were taught about Hindu gods, they're not responsible, at their young age for not believing in the actual God. But if, someone is innocently unaware of God's existence or what he wants from us, then as long as that person otherwise is willing, they would be willing to do what God wants if they knew about him, then God knows their heart. He knows their heart is willing to do what he wants if they only knew, and he won't punish them or hold them accountable for what they were innocently unaware of. He'll give them grace to be with him in the end, even if they didn't have conscious faith in him in this life, as long as they're innocently unaware of what he wants them to do, and they otherwise live up to the light that they have been given, however much or little that is.
Amal, thank you very, very much for that question. I hope that was helpful to you. I have never in my life before heard Jimmy Akin give an answer that included both the Rolling Stones and C.S. Lewis in the same answer, so I feel like that was...
They're both British.
I know, it was a very British answer, yeah. I thought you might get some kind of prize. Just name one more British thing, and then the chicken will fall from the ceiling and you win a prize. Thanks, Amal. Tom, in New York, which I know exists because people have told me it exists, but I've been there too.
I've been there, but I could be wrong. I mean, they told me I was in New York, but how do I know for sure?
Right, they could have put up all that signage just for you.
Have faith, man.
Tom's listening on Catholic.com. Thanks for your call, Tom. Your question for Jimmy.
Yes, hi, guys.
Hi.
Jimmy, I wanted to say thanks for your apologetics course. I'm taking that and enjoying it so far.
Great. Yay, awesome.
And two quick questions, if I may.
Okay.
One, what scriptures that are not in the canon are considered inspired, and do you think they'd be helpful?
Okay. What's the second question?
To check out. Second question is, when did the Catholic Church, I'm a cradle Catholic, start using missalettes instead of the Bible, the full, everybody bringing their own Bible, and have they considered going back so that Catholics might get more familiar, today's Catholics might get more familiar with the Bible?
Okay. So let's deal with the second question first because it's a little simpler. Actually, there never was a time when Catholics would all bring their own Bibles. In the early church, the Bible was not a single book. It was a collection of books. And before the printing press, books were fantastically expensive. So like a single copy of Matthew's Gospel would cost you the equivalent of like $1,500. Okay, so they were just fantastically expensive. Ordinary people could not afford the books of the Bible. And so what they would do is by donating to the church, they would pool their resources so that the church could afford the scriptures and then read them out loud to the faithful at Mass. Also, most of the faithful couldn't read anyway, so they needed them read to them. So there never was a time when every Catholic had a Bible. That's something you could only have happen after the 1450s when the printing press was invented, and even then it really wouldn't happen. But what did happen was the church early on in the early centuries wanted to give people a selection of readings from different places in the Bible. And that led to the creation of a special kind of book called a lectionary, which has the different readings from different places in the Old and the New Testament that are used on particular days in the liturgy. And so in addition to having a complete copy of the scriptures, churches would also have a lectionary that they would use at Mass. And a lectionary is basically an equivalent that the parish would own of what was later called a missal that an ordinary person might own. An ordinary person after the printing press could own a missal that would have, in addition to the prayers of the Mass, would also have the readings for the Mass in it. And ordinary people would have missals that they would bring to Mass they were very useful because you could quickly flip to the readings for a day as opposed to flipping back and forth to different places in a Bible. They're all right there starting on the same page for you. So you just have to look in one place to find the readings for the day. There's a lot of usefulness in that. And it had the prayers of the Mass in it too. So people would use these missals when they would go to Mass. But then, after the Second Vatican Council, it was decided to increase the number of readings or the places in the Bible that the readings were drawing from. So instead of having a one-year cycle, the Second Vatican Council decided to have a 3-year cycle for Sundays and holy days and a 2-year cycle for weekdays. And that meant that there were so many different readings now that you couldn't fit them all in a one-volume missal. And that led to the creation of the missalettes. And by this, so you have a new missalette for every season with the readings for just that season as well as the prayers of the Mass. And by this point, the economics of the printing industry had changed now to bring the price of the missalettes down so they could all be put there for the faithful in a way the parish could afford. So that's how we got missalettes. In terms of, is there talk about getting rid of the missalettes and going back to and having people bring their own Bibles? I'm not aware of any such talk, and I suspect it would not be a proposal that wouldn't get very far because it would be hard to get everybody to get a Bible and bring it. What if they forget?
Right.
And get them to flip to like 4 different places in the Bible every Sunday. Right. It's
here
much
more
convenient to just say, go to today's readings in the missalette.
Yeah.
In terms of the other question, are there scriptures that are considered inspired that aren't in the Bible? Not by the Catholic Church. All of the scriptures that the Catholic Church has recognized as inspired are in the Bible. Could there be other scriptures that are inspired? Well, as I talk about in The Bible is a Catholic Book, some of the prophets in the Old Testament wrote additional books that are not in the Bible. Like Isaiah wrote another book, but it's not in the Bible. There are also other prophets like Iddo the seer, who wrote books, and there was another book called The Prophecy of Elijah the Shilonite. So those are books of prophecy. These were by legitimate prophets. Presumably God's Spirit was at work in those. They may have been inspired, but it was not God's choice. If they were, it was not God's choice to preserve them and have them included in the modern Bible. One thing I've talked about from time to time is, there are other Christians who recognize additional books as inspired, like in the Eastern Orthodox Communion, they'll recognize certain additional books like the Prayer of Manasseh, the 151st Psalm, an additional book of Maccabees, and so forth. But thus far, the Holy Spirit has not led the Catholic Church to recognize those as Scripture. What happens in the future, we'll have to leave in God's hands. But even if they're not inspired, that doesn't mean they're not good to read. So you can read these things and they'll shed more light about what people in Jesus' time and nearby centuries thought on certain matters.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks to everybody who called this hour. Sorry I left a few on the phone, but we do this again every Tuesday and Thursday. We do this open forum. Jimmy Akin has been our guest. His latest book is The Bible is a Catholic Book. It's available in single issues or in bulk at shop.catholic.com. And tomorrow, the new episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World drops, and it will be on alien implants.
Yeah.
Spooky. All right, we'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.